Do you think there's sort of this psyche with, the normal everyday person that, whatever, this can't happen to me?
They hadn't thought about it.
Maybe the official plan is a good, well thought out plan.
They didn't believe it would happen to them.
Screaming and running around.
Maybe it's not.
What's the plan?
They have to be able to react.
Well, it's just a volume of scale. There's a lot more people in a lot smaller area, so the population density is much higher.
Good morning, Robin. The air here is already thick, and we're expecting to get to at least 100 degrees in Philadelphia. And they just finished their hottest June in 137 years. And now, on top of the heat, there are concerns about the air quality. It's very possible that today and tomorrow we could see the worst air quality in several years. The concern is that the air quality could reach code red.
What happens in an urban environment is the buildings store and hold the heat, the asphalt, the pollution from just simply cars tends to stay low to the ground.
So the urban heat island effect occurs when the temperature in the city itself remains hot over a 24-hour period. So in rural areas or in areas without much of a built environment, the temperature goes up during the day and then it falls down at night. But when you don't see that cooling at night, that indicates that there's an urban heat island effect because the temperatures remain elevated.
The body's stresses to the excess heat just increase every single day that a heat wave goes on. You get weaker and weaker and weaker, and we're getting more of these, and they're more extreme.
There's been some research in Philadelphia that's indicated that it's not only a function of heat exposure. In other words, it's not the neighborhoods that are the hottest that experience the most heat-related mortalities and morbidities. So what is it? Well, we found that on top of it, it's also social vulnerabilities, so low-income residents, also residents that are living in older houses that aren't as well shielded from the heat. Those also contribute to heat-related vulnerabilities.
Hopefully they can afford some kind of cooling units, because heat is a big threat, especially for small children who don't cool themselves as well.
So if you're thinking about what to do to reduce vulnerabilities, you have to have this really clear portrait. That it's not just a function of who's hottest, but it's also a function of who has the ability to adapt and respond to that heat.
These things always affect people across different economic statuses. The medium and lower, they're just going to be affected in much more negative ways.
With climate change predictions, there's going to be even more instances of extreme heat events in Philadelphia and other cities as well. But there are predictions that the number of days where the temperature is going to be over 100 degrees could be 2 to 16 days per summer. Right now, on average, we don't experience any.
That's one of the biggest threats to a large city like Philadelphia.
Extreme heat events, they actually cause more deaths in Philadelphia than other weather-related events. That's true for the United States.
I don't think most of us think about just the lethality of a big heat event.
It has been a long day, followed by a long night for folks trying to seek shelter from the storm. A lot of folks have lost their power tonight. They've been coming here to the Radnor Hotel, only to find there's no room at the inn.
Other people too, just getting out and walking. This is a good one. I mean, this is the first time we've really had any snow, so, but this is a great storm, and I love it when, every other year or so I get enough snow that I can go out and ski, so. It's fun. Just like in Philadelphia, we have a snowstorm every 2 or 3 years that's pretty big, and we forget how to deal with it.
We had a very big storm last January, and the weather people had been predicting and saying, I think this is going to be a big one.
Snow can literally block you in your house. I mean, don't get me wrong, a big flood could too, but a snowstorm can immobilize a city.
And that's probably just as hazardous as heat events in the summer. clearing the streets and getting people to shelters and getting people safe, and code blues and blankets and things like that.
These things can snowball quickly. If a lot of people cannot get out of their homes, then a lot of people can't get out of their homes. That means a lot of people can't get to their jobs, a lot of people can't get to work, which means the grocery stores aren't open, or the local convenience store isn't open, or nobody is available to get to their trucks to plow the snow.
Bobby got here, he went and picked up Josh, and he got here around, I don't know when he got here.
To open up the roads, to get services. If you have a fire in your house and the roads have 3 feet of snow in it, it's going to take a lot longer for that fire truck to get to your house, if it even can get to your house.
People get trapped, especially in areas where there's sort of an alley, and it can take them 48 hours to be cleared. And if you get 2 feet, you can't walk through that.
So he declared a state of emergency, first time since 1966. He's just warning Philadelphians that this is still a very dangerous and possibly dangerous, deadly situation. And he said that Philadelphians should do the best in the city of brotherly love to watch out for each other, that we will do what needs to be done in this situation. Now let's talk about New Jersey for just a little bit. It appears
being in an urban environment with a lot of impervious surfaces, the potential for quicker flooding is greater. Philadelphia is sandwiched between two big rivers, the Delaware and the Schuylkill, so it's high potential for flooding.
Because of the big funnel shape of the Delaware Bay, a lot of the high water, especially that's pushed by the storms, sort of beyond the tide, the storm surge may get amplified in the bay, and at the apex of that funnel, at the apex of that bay is the city of Philadelphia.
If there are atmospheric storms like hurricanes, when they coincide with high and low tides, you get, of course, this increase in the coastal sea level. That just increases the devastation of flooding.
In a big city, too, you have a lot more impervious surfaces, so the rain has nowhere to go. So it can't absorb into the ground and slowly make its way into the groundwater and slowly make its way to the rivers. It just hits the pavement, shoots right to the gutter goes right to the water, and then there's no time for any sort of absorbing of all that water energy.
If you look around the city and you have drainage grates and they're covered in litter and trash and now at this time of the year leaves, that can inhibit some of the drainage processes.
But because so much is paved, even after a regular rain, a lot of it doesn't seep into the ground, but rather rushes sort of sideways into drainages, and a lot of times they can't keep up. So you have this extra water that sits on top of the pavement in parking lots and streets and buildings.
And one of the problems with flooding is then you have not just poor water quality, but you can sometimes have dangerous water. When you see people walking through those flooded areas or their homes are flooded, the water is very, very, very polluted. And so you have somebody walking through there or a child, they have open wounds. It's very unsafe for them.
Historically, I think people avoid thinking about disasters because it feels scary. My name is Sarah Powell, Director of Emergency Management here at Temple University. There's also a very common thought that it's not going to happen to me.
If somebody doesn't think that they are at risk, they probably won't take actions that are needed.
And that was Gregoire Filonenko, one of the survivors at Bataclan, who, by the way, is a gardener. Now, this place here is...
There's shit happening.
There's something going on here. People are running. Okay. People are running away. We have... Qu'est-ce qui se passe? People are running. people are shooting, maybe. I just heard a shot, but I'm not sure if that's true.
Media can absolutely contribute to re-traumatizing people.
This moves 20 miles to the west, and you and everyone you know are dead. All of you.
Creating vicarious trauma.
It was sudden. It was violent. Raging floodwaters ripping through whatever stood in its way. Houses, cars, just about everything.
And sensationalizing stories to the point that there is a backlash on particular communities.
But we've also seen cars underwater, and that's a frightening sight. I mean, all you can do is really hope that whoever was driving that car was able to make it out. So you can imagine that there is a little bit of panic.
It can cut both ways. It can either make you so freaked out that you can't move, or it can make you so complacent that you think, oh, that's never going to happen to me, I don't need to worry about it. A person is usually smart and rational, but when you get people together, that's when things can start to break down, especially panicked people.
We do have incidents that create anxiety for people, and I think that the biggest, I would say, overlooked factor in disaster preparedness is how large of an impact the psychological footprint can be. The anxiety can blow up your surge of numbers of people needing assistance more than anything else.
When you have a disaster, your first humanitarian response comes from private groups like the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, and then generally we see within 3 or 4 days later, FEMA comes in and sets up and they start handing out response checks and all that. This is so big, this hasn't happened. And in fact, they feel forgotten.
The subway system flooded. Also a hospital, New York University Langone Center. That hospital was flooded, knocked out the backup generator. They had to evacuate some 200 patients to other hospitals.
You may have one person exposed and 500 people show up at the emergency room because there's so much anxiety about that event.
What are you going to do if you don't have the internet or you don't have cell phone service? Are you prepared to go 5 days without power, without water in your home? And the answer for most people is no.
Quit generating as much hysteria as the Weather Channel does, and be reasonable about it. There's no way that those storms coming up like Jonas is anywhere close to the kind of stuff that hits the Gulf of Mexico.
If you already have all that prepared ahead of time, it almost can make this situation seem less intense.
Keep in mind that preparedness does two things. One, it lowers your anxiety about that event. So if you feel anxious about something like a residential fire, take a moment to think about, do I have a smoke detector that's working in my house? If I know I have working smoke detectors, my anxiety about residential fires is going to go down. Preparedness lowers your anxiety and increases your chance of survival. And I think it's really important to treat that in a very empowering, self-empowering way rather than something to be afraid of.
I think it's important to be prepared mentally within reason. Don't be paranoid, don't be hysterical. Understand that disasters are a part of the universe.
I think most people do not look at heat and flooding as their biggest. They're looking for a big giant earthquake, they're looking for buildings to fall, they're looking for meteorite impacts.
But we know that climate change is happening. We know that the planet is warming. We know that CO2 emissions are massively increasing. And so there are things we could do to prevent those, the effects of those, but we're not doing it. We're not doing anywhere near enough.
I would say that, you know, the risk of violent threats is growing across the country, so we spend a lot of time preparing for events like that as well.
Large storms of a certain magnitude happen every 20, 30 years. Obviously, we've got much more infrastructure on the way now, So we got much better of keeping people alive after storms, but obviously because we have more expensive infrastructure, that's why we get trillions of dollars worth of damage.
Most people think that their town, their city, their municipality, somehow they're going to take care of them, because 99.9% of the time they do.
I never assume the people that are in charge actually know what they're doing.
In 1993, there was a major heat event in which I think over 100 people died. Following that event in 1993, Philadelphia took action, and they've been a leader in responding to extreme heat events.
To their credit, they're usually pretty good, and it's just a matter of being patient and waiting.
People don't tend to heed the mayor's warnings when they say get out, but not everybody can get out, but try to wherever possible.
An evacuation route it's usually the biggest road out of town. It's the fastest way for the most amount of people to get out of town, and these are good at slightly longer term predictions.
Pennsylvania sort of hazard preparedness websites that you could go to, and it will give you like a little quickie list of things that you should think to take with you.
When I approach emergency preparedness, I'm really looking at the very lowest level all the way to these more catastrophic events.
Basic preparedness, have evacuation plans, have meeting plans, have some basic supplies on hand like food, water, medicine, blankets, something as simple as shoes.
Preparations can range from drinking water. They can also warn you to not go outside during the hottest parts of the day. These very individual level responses.
Create a go kit. If you had to leave suddenly, leave your apartment or your home, what do you really need to have by the door?
Get that bag together relatively quickly if you did need to evacuate.
Just simple things of when you walk in, just look around, see where the exit is. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same way you walked in.
Batteries with backup power. So
If you think ahead, you're going to be more comfortable in having what you really need handy than if you don't.
I also need to be responsible for the people around me. So I need to check on my elderly neighbor. I need to make sure the family down the street's doing okay. Philadelphia has made this very easy by their ready.gov system that you can rely on to get that type of timely information.
The thing to keep in mind about emergency management, and especially emergency preparedness, is that this is everybody's job. This is everyone's job. Everyone has a role in it. When we do evacuation testing, some people, feel like the rules don't apply, but it's not even about rules.
And the cities that are being proactive are the cities that you don't hear too much devastation about. They're prepared. They have these plans in place. Luck favors the prepared.